Okay, sway bars, roll bars, whatever. What do we know? You talking to me? Yeah. Well, seeing as you're always here, you may as well be useful. So, do you know anything about them? What? Sway bars. Well, not much, really. I know a bit about the antithesis of a sway bar. Don't get smart. It doesn't suit you. All right, it's episode 19 and we're pushing on with things. If you're new, this video will get you mostly caught up with our Pontiac, Mustang, Corvette, Jeep, Toyota, Triumph, Restomod thing. Last time we did a lot more measuring, calculating, and simulating to make sure our steering geometry will work correctly. And happy with what we found, the factory GT6 rack was cut down, welded up, and we built a beefy mount for it. There's no column yet, which is why the steering shaft is so floppy, in case you're wondering. You may think, that's great, but surely you could have accomplished more than that. The thing is, my name's not Shirley, it's Michael, and this stuff's important, so it would have been foolish to rush. Rather than pushing on with a column today, we're going to change course a bit and concentrate on roll control devices, or anti-roll bars. Hence the antithesis thing. Anyway, there's lots to come, so subscribe and hit the bell. On the surface, you may think, seriously, how hard can this be? Just bolt up a sway bar and be done with it, right? Well, the problem is... Well, let me guess. You sold the old one and now have to figure out something else. Have I really got that predictable? Yeah. Oh no. Anyway, yeah, the factory bar was reasonable for a factory setup, but that's not exactly what we're dealing with, is it? So we're taking another route. We're gonna build one. Now, before you rush to the comments to tell me you just can't do that, I know, you're probably right. The truth is, this is kind of an experiment that we really hope works. We need a very specific shape for our situation, and rather than spending an eternity looking through junkyards, we thought it easier just to make one. Before we jump in head first though, let's just take a minute to clarify what a sway bar is. It's a straight spring. Or maybe a spring is just a coiled sway bar. Like a torsion beam, an anti-sway bar twists along its length. Like this. The key is to not twist too much. Time to deploy smarty pants glasses. Most materials do three things when you subject them to a force. They will spring back to their original shape, or they will permanently deform, or they'll break. This is because of what's known as elastic or plastic deformation. If we graph this, we've got stress, or essentially strength, over strain, or the force applied. If you strain the material this much, it will just spring back to its original shape. We can keep doing this over and over. If we go further, we'll surpass the material's yield strength, and we'll begin a deformation process known as strain hardening. At this point, the material will never return to its original size or shape again. Further along, at the peak, here, the material will have reached its maximum strength, after which it will just begin weakening until it eventually breaks. For these reasons, a sway bar is precisely designed to operate in its elastic range. As you corner, weight is transferred to the outside of the car, and the body will try to lean. That overloads this tire, causing the car to plow or understeer. A sway bar overcomes this by linking the sides together and limiting how much roll the body can have. Most cars use front and rear sway bars, but in a small, lightweight rear-wheel drive road car like ours, you can get away with just using one up front. So that at least simplifies things for us a bit. We're broadly referring to materials so far, but of course in the real world your car probably doesn't have springs made of plastic. They're usually made out of a special type of steel known as spring steel. Original, I know. What's maybe not commonly realized though is that sway bars, although a type of spring, are not always made of this spring steel. Some are, and others are chromoly. Maybe it's all marketing, but the long and the short of it is if you spec out the material correctly, you can just use plain old steel. Most typically, sway bars are solid, but you can get tubular versions for some cars, which have the advantage of being just as strong, but a heck of a lot lighter when spec'd out for the same application. Even normal drawn-over mandrel tubing like you'd build a roll cage out of can be used as long as you use the right piece. Now, if you wish to challenge this whole concept, I'm really not the right guy to speak to, as everything I've just shared with you is stuff I've learned from people much smarter than myself. If you want to know more, I've linked some very interesting forum threads in the description below. Now, the Triumph's original bar was 7/8 of an inch diameter solid steel. And as I just mentioned, the material in the middle of the bar is not really adding much strength. So by moving to a 1-inch hollow tube with an 1/8 inch wall, amazingly we can cut about half the weight while even gaining a bit of stiffness. We'd like a bit more of an increase though, so we've actually chosen to go with a 1 1/8 inch tube with an 1/8 inch wall, which should increase our torsional strength by roughly 73% over factory. Not that those are exact numbers, but still I'd say it's pretty significant. There are plenty of aftermarket options available for Miatas in this size, so I think we should be okay. Probably the coolest thing about anti-roll bars is unless you're cornering hard or going over very bumpy roads, you really don't notice them too much. So that's good. There is one last thing we should mention, and I know we're almost done. Generally, welding the ends of a sway bar in place is considered a no-go. It's said that the heat-affected zone beside the weld will crack easily, rendering the bar useless and potentially dangerous. Now, this is not entirely false, and ideally, you would use a TIG or even stick welder rather than the MIG like what we have, but I would have much more hesitation doing this if we were building an 8,000-pound truck. Our loads are going to be pretty small, relatively speaking, and we're not the very first to do this, so it's worth a shot. Okay then, enough of that. Let's start with the main piece of DOM tubing. We've elected to cut the ends of the tube on an angle for 3 reasons. First, because we need to angle the arms out anyway, and this gets us off to a start. 2, because it increases the length of the weld, and that should make it a bit stronger. And D, because it changes the shear forces from being completely torsional to also a bit radial, which should help spread the load and prevent the ends ripping right off. At least it should in my head. And I'm not 100% sure radial is the right word, but it's something like that. Those smaller pieces fit over the tube to give us end stops, controlling the side-to-side motion of the sway bar, as well as giving us additional material to weld the arms to. Before we build the arms though, we first need to make some mounts, or brackets, or mount kits, if you like, to secure the main tube to the chassis. This piece of 3x3 has been sacrificed for the task, and after some time with the grinder, flap disc, and hammer, these should work nicely. There it is, all clamped in place, and you can see how the bar just barely sneaks out the sides of the frame for tire clearance. It also completely sits behind the front of the engine, meaning we should have no issues with clearance to the harmonic balancer, which is currently AWOL. With some fiddling, a mock-up arm is now made from some thinner material, and we can start fabricating the real ones. This should be fun. That bar is 3/8 of an inch thick, which is small compared to most cars, I'm sure, but should be plenty for what we're doing. And, well, we'll find out at least. The 2 small slits there should help us get some fairly tight bends in it, which we're going to produce with the obvious tool for the job. A tubing bender. Wait, no. A pipe bender. The logical choice. Let's see what she can muster. Well, that wasn't too bad. Quite honestly, I get the feeling the bender could have handled a lot thicker material than this. It's taken care of things quite nicely, and those grooves we cut did help to keep the bend radius tighter on the middle too, so it's all worked perfectly. We just need to weld them back up now, and there you go. Nice. Okay, only the small task of cutting it down to size. Yeah, a plasma cutter would be nice, but a $40 angle grinder works just fine. Now please excuse us while Dad opens yet another pack of discs, and I rest my back for no reason. They've turned out pretty darn symmetrical, which is great, as that was kind of the point. The odd shape is so that they will clear the tie rods, control arms, coil springs, and steering knuckles as things articulate. Thankfully, it looks like it should work just as we'd planned, so let's drill some holes for the end links to bolt up to. There was going to be 2 holes for adjustability, as you see here, but we really couldn't afford room for the additional length, so we just cut off the end and we'll use the shorter position. To get all 3 parts lined up correctly, we marked a couple of lines on the tubing with the aid of a length of angle iron. These give us a reference for some corresponding marks on the arms, and on the whole, this seems to have got us off to the right start. Next, let's spend some quality time with a couple of levels, tape, a sawhorse, and plumb line to see how close things really are. We've zeroed out both directions, and the string is resting on the edge of the top hole, so ideally the pointer should be right here. But how much do you really trust a bubble level anyway? It's already taken us a full afternoon to get this close, and the difference shouldn't make any major impacts to anything, so let's just weld it up. Using a vise, and it so happens one of the mounts we made earlier, we devised a jig to rotate the unit for welding. After the first bead, the collar was slid into place, plug welded, and fully gone round one more time, so there's a fair bit of meat in this area. I do think I was going a little too slowly on the final bead, as it's a bit bulgy looking, but I have a pretty good faith that it ain't going anywhere. These fancy zinc-plated brackets that came with our new bushings need to bolt to our mounts, and some captive nuts are the obvious solution. They've been cleaned up and will get burned in next time the welder's going. To provide clearance for those bolts, though, we need to relieve a bit of the frame.
I love drilling upside down with my left hand.
Okay, stop right there. So that's 5/8. Probably should have done that the last time the chassis was tipped over, but we didn't know. At least it's done now. So with that, the mounts are now tacked into place, bar bolted up, and we can do a quick once over to see how it's turned out. That's what I'd call a darn tight fit, but it fits. That's the point. I know there are probably better ways of building a sway bar, and if you know of a factory one that you think is the right shape and size, please tell us. This beastie is 38 inches wide at the end links, 28 for the main bar, and has 10-inch arms. Ultimately, what we've got should give us the performance we need and the packaging we need for a cost that really didn't hurt too bad. As we've said before, getting all this new front-end design sorted out has been way more work than we could have ever possibly imagined, but it is done now, barring a final welding spree to lock in all the currently tacked pieces for good. That will happen when the body comes off next, as in the meanwhile, you may notice the engine has been pulled again and separated from the transmission. Yep, I think it's finally time to sort out the real reason why nobody uses the LS4. Next time. If you enjoy what we're up to, please help us out by subscribing and sharing the series with some friends. A huge thank you to our amazing patrons and donators for their continued support. And if you'd like to help contribute, please check out the links below. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Fanatik Builds, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much for watching.